The Bolivian de facto regime has launched a new attack on the presidential candidate for the movement towards socialism, Luis Arce. French President Emmanuel Macron announced that a state of natural disaster will be declared for 55 municipalities following deadly floods in the southeastern region. Iranian authorities reported a record number of daily COVID-19 deaths this Wednesday. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. The Bolivian de facto regime has once again launched an attack on the presidential candidate for the movement towards socialism, Luis Arce, who leads all the polls in a lead-up to the October 18th general election. Our correspondent in Bolivia, Camila Escalante, brings us an interview with Senator for the movement, Adriana Salvatierra, regarding the moves to prevent Arce from participating in the elections.
The Bolivian regime is filing new charges against mass candidate Luis Arce, accusing him and his family of having irregular activity in their bank accounts, and even of having offshore accounts in Panama and Uruguay. The details of these allegations were divulged by the public prosecutor, a regime loyalist who was recently appointed by Interior Minister Arturo Murillo. The legislature has rejected his appointment and will move to dismiss the prosecutor. I spoke with Mass Senator Adriana Salvatierra and asked her what she thought of the latest assault on movement towards socialism candidate Luis Arce. What do you think about these accusations being put against him?
Toda la elección en realidad ha estado vinculada.
All of the election, in reality, we've seen this attempt to invalidate not only the leaders and candidates of the movement towards socialism, with multiple accusations since the coup in November, and many of them are continuing to face legal proceedings and political and legal persecution. The legal war has moved into a new stage to try to outlaw the movement towards socialism, attempt to eliminate and try to invisibilize the participation of the movement towards socialism. The third stage arrived at a time when it endangers the electoral process. So I think that beyond the accusations, when there is an electoral process, it generates some distrust. Of course, we don't believe this. We believe that these are accusations of a political character. They are utilizing and instrumentalizing the justice system in order to prosecute someone, to make accusations which destroy their image in order to impede the participation of party or even limit the participation of Bolivians in the electoral process. It's a process which was supposed to take place first on May the 3rd, then on August 2nd, then September 6th, and finally October 18th.
Colombian citizens living in the United States mobilized on Wednesday to denounce systematic human rights violations in their home country committed by the government of President Ivan Duque. Colombian residents gathered in front of the Colombian consulate in New York to protest the recent massacres committed in Colombia, which have once again shed light on the ongoing human rights violations in the country. Meanwhile, the Colombian diaspora, together with a group of human rights activists, will submit a report detailing that at least 225 assassinations of social leaders have occurred in more than 65 massacres, targeting demobilized former guerrillas and signatories to the 2016 peace accords. The report will also note the inaction on the part of President Ivan Duque to address the escalating violence in Colombia. In Guatemala, indigenous farmers have called on the government of President Alejandro Giammattei to grant them lands occupied by foreign landowners and have condemned the stagnation of agricultural policies. Our correspondent, Rolanda Garcia, brings us more details.
The Farmers' Committee of the Highlands, CCDA, denounced little progress in resolving the problem of land distribution in Guatemala and rejected the cancellation of the establishment of peace on agrarian aspects.
Although
the state has not solved the problem of agriculture in Guatemala, it has closed public institutions, so we are extremely concerned about this structural problem, which the Guatemalan state has not had the capacity to solve.
The farmers point out that in Alta and Baja Verapaz, the land is concentrated in the hands of Germans, who, with the support of the state, violate the local families that seek to regain their lands.
The landowner started to threaten us when he realized that we started to recognize our rights. They keep on threatening us with firearms until they finally cut our garden off.
They also say that the government, instead of solving the lack of lands, has unleashed a strategy of criminalization.
What the president says about not having agrarian conflicts in Guatemala, that is a lie. We are living in one now. Here in Purula, the patients continue, the arrest warrants continue.
They reported that only this year in Verapaces, several violent evictions have been perpetrated, allowed by the current law.
When we demand agrarian justice, we are not demanding illegal issues. We are demanding justice so that the native and farmer population's right to the territory and what historically has been their land is effectively recognized.
The Agrarian Congress of Farmers Committee of the Highlands will be held on October 20th, where hundreds of rural workers will demand the government to recognize their ancestral lands.
The director of the Pan American Health Organization reported that 11 countries and territories in the Caribbean have moved from moderate to intense COVID-19 transmission over the past 60 days, while highlighting that ethnic minorities in the United States are at a nearly 3 times higher risk of contracting the virus as their white counterparts.
Over the past 60 days, 11 countries and territories in the Caribbean have moved from moderate to intense transmission, which is a concerning development as countries reopen airspace. The good news is that rates of severe COVID illness have fallen across our region. Today, fewer people are being hospitalized and fewer require intensive care than before. Within the United States, which is home to more than 40% of new cases in our region, Black, Hispanic, and Native American populations are nearly 3 times as likely to contract COVID as their white counterparts.
French President Emmanuel Macron noted that a state of natural disaster will be declared for 55 municipalities in the Alpes-Maritimes department, starting on Thursday after recent heavy rains unleashed deadly floods in the region. He also announced €100 million in emergency aid to fund recovery works.
Decisions have been taken today. The first one is the natural disaster decree that classifies 55 communes and that will allow these 55 communes. It will be published tomorrow morning in the official gazette. And I thank all the teams, the ministers, for having worked hard so that in 3 days such a decree will be taken, which will allow in a very fast, very simple, very effective way to deploy precisely the aid and all the insurers. We are going to invest very clearly in this fund in order to be able to rebuild infrastructures that communities alone would not be able to rebuild certain essential equipment, whether it be sanitary, commercial or historical, and to rebuild in a manner consistent with the approach that we are taking and that the Minister of Transition is taking, which is to say in a resilient and sustainable manner.
This Wednesday, Europe surpassed 6 million confirmed COVID-19 cases since the virus first appeared in the region in January. More than 237,000 COVID-19 related deaths have now been confirmed across Europe. Russia is the hardest hit nation, having reported more than 1.2 million cases and nearly 22,000 deaths. Spain ranks second with over 825,000 cases, followed by France and the United Kingdom. Of these top 4 nations, the United Kingdom has reported the highest COVID-19 death toll at over 42,000. In the past week, the rate of new infections has been 36% higher than in the previous week. The number of deaths also increased by 17% over the same period. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon announced a 2-week closure of pubs across Scotland in order to tackle a recent spike in new COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, health authorities reported 1,044 new cases on Wednesday.
However, we estimate that the number of new COVID cases is currently growing by around 7% each day. So without action, and this is perhaps the starkest warning in today's evidence paper, we are likely to return to the peak level of infections we had in the spring by the end of this month. About shortly, pubs, bars, restaurants and cafes will be able to operate indoors on the following very restricted basis only. during the day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the service of food and non-alcoholic drinks only. Hotel restaurants will be able to operate beyond 6 p.m. but only for residents and without alcohol.
Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte announced the extension of the COVID-19 state of emergency until January 31st, 2021, in a move to curb the spread of the virus across the country.
From now on, masks and protective gear have to be brought with us when we leave our house and worn. We have to wear them all the time, unless we are in a situation of continuous isolation. If we visit friends, acquaintances or relatives who are not living with us, we have to take care because, as the experts say, the friend and family relations are the most dangerous situations where the infection can spread more. I want to stress that in this case, for the private houses we are talking about, a governmental recommendation, a strong recommendation.
This Wednesday night, the US vice presidential candidates will hold a debate which has been described by think tank the Brookings Institution as the most important in United States history. The significance of the event, usually not that important in the US presidential election schedule, derives from unique events surrounding it. It comes after President Donald Trump announced he had COVID-19, a virus that's claimed the lives of over 200,000 Americans and impacted on millions of others. Kamala Harris, the woman who aspires to be the first female vice president in history, will debate Republican Vice President Mike Pence, a deeply religious man from Indiana, in the University of Utah's Kingsbury Hall. As President Donald Trump could have been contagious during the first debate, the organizers have agreed to seat Harris and Pence 12 feet apart, and there will also be a glass shield around each candidate's side of the stage to diminish the possibilities of infections. Meanwhile, the debate comes amid the controversy sparked by President Donald Trump's remarks casting doubt over the mail-in voting system to be adopted for the 2020 presidential race. Member of the grassroots organisation Code Pink and human rights activist Michelle Elner brings us more details.
With 4 weeks before the election day, more than 3.8 million Americans have already voted in an electoral contest that is anything but usual. President Trump has repeatedly questioned the mail-in voting, and in doing so, he may be intentionally discouraging some voters that are afraid of contracting COVID-19 by going to the polls from voting. It is a well-known fact that high voter participation favors the Democratic candidate over the Republicans one, like Trump. Among the real possibilities that are being considered by the Republicans is that the Trump campaign, alleging fraud as a result of mail-in voting, could ask state legislatures, which the Republicans dominate, to appoint electors. The U.S. Constitution gives the state legislatures the power to appoint electors to the Electoral College, which ends up electing the nation's president. Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., turned to social media to call for able-bodied people to join an electoral army for his father, to scrutinize polling centers. This tactic will discourage voters from going to the polls, fearing violence from white supremacists who also happen to be Trump supporters. President Trump has repeatedly refused to state that he will leave office in a peaceful transfer of power if he loses. The problem is that in the U.S., there is no electoral council that could oversee the election or determine who is the victor. We count on the loser to act in good faith and accept the reality. If elections 20 years ago won by George W. Bush is any indication, what may take place on November 3rd is a series of electoral challenges that may reach the Supreme Court, where Republicans, if they succeed in naming a new justice before November 3rd, will have a 6-3 advantage. In the state of Virginia, Michelle Elner from Code Pink.
The Iranian government reported that the country hit its highest number of daily COVID-19 deaths this Wednesday at 239 new fatalities. The latest figures brought the death toll to more than 27,000. A spokesperson for the health ministry said healthcare professionals had also recorded over 4,000 new confirmed cases, bringing the total number to more than 483,000. According to the health ministry, 50% of the fatalities have been recorded in the capital, Tehran, which has a population of 10 million. Iran warned on Wednesday that it will not tolerate terrorists near its border with Azerbaijan after France and Russia raised the alarm over the deployment of Syrian militants supported by Turkey in the conflict over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani stressed that it is unacceptable that some forces intend to send terrorists from Syria and other places towards regions near the nation's borders. Iran has called on both Armenia and Azerbaijan to cease the hostilities and offered to facilitate talks. On Saturday, Tehran warned against any intrusion after mortar fire hit Iranian villages along the border. Opposition parties have called for an end to the chaos in Kyrgyzstan and set up a new electoral commission as the president accused them of attempting to seize power. The political crisis was sparked by violent demonstrations against the results of the parliamentary elections held on Sunday, in which only 4 of the 16 parties participating secured the 7% threshold to enter parliament. The electoral authorities decided to annul the results, but tensions remain. Kyrgyzstan's prime minister, as well as several state governors and other government officials, have resigned. And China on Wednesday called for dialogue and negotiations between different political actors in Kyrgyzstan, expressing concern about the continuation of violent protests against the parliamentary election results. Hua Changying, spokeswoman for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, said in a statement that her government advocates the search for a solution based on the rule of law, dialogue and consultation to restore stability in Kyrgyzstan as soon as possible. The official also noted that China has always respected the development path chosen by the people of Kyrgyzstan according to their national conditions and firmly supports policies to safeguard sovereignty and security while opposing any foreign interference in Kyrgyzstan's internal affairs. And clashes with police officers were reported during a demonstration in Tel Aviv against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Protesters in the occupied city of Jerusalem, many carrying Israeli flags, lined streets and stood in open spaces maintaining distance from one another and wearing protective masks. But later scuffles ensued between police and protesters trying to break through a cordon and march through the streets. They carried banners reading "Oppressor resign" and a cartoon image of Netanyahu behind bars as a reference to his ongoing trial for bribery, fraud and breach of trust. With over 270,000 confirmed coronavirus cases and over 1,700 deaths in a population of 9 million, Israel currently has the world's highest weekly infection rate per capita.
I came to demonstrate to protest the situation and treatment of coronavirus, and it's annoying. I have no job now. I was a waitress before the coronavirus and they closed all the restaurants. They don't open a bit and close again. I have not had money and job for many months and I am not optimistic about the situation. And it seems to me that it will be really bad. I came here with a black flag to demonstrate against the situation we have reached and the fear that there will soon be democracy here and with irrational political decisions.
Demonstrators took to the streets in the South African city of Pretoria this Wednesday to protest corruption amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
But what we're raising is that corruption has taken away from workers. Healthcare workers, workers in the public sector have died contracting coronavirus because the quality of PPEs that were given were not of a quality that will defend workers as they are trying to defend our own lives.
Of the companies, you'll be ashamed if I might tell you how much am I earning. Yes. Of which is a secret, I won't tell you, but it's very painful. Yes. So please, Cyril Ramaphosa, do something. Do something for us, please.
As you can see in South Africa, there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of corruption, and at least the president is trying to do something about it, but I don't know what to say. I'm even confused about it because everyone is doing corruption. Even our money, maybe that's why we don't have it, because somebody is eating our money there, and we want it, it's ours.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many of our stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.